It's kind of amazing to see the defense force for Dragon's Dogma kind of come out of the woodwork and try to justify what Capcom has done here, right? Like, never mind the frame rate issues on PC, never mind all the glitches, all the issues, all the real technical problems. Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the best games this year because it just is, okay? Right? It's kind of like the Sekiro thing all over again, right? Where a game clearly hasn't like resonated with the audience at all, but they're not going to have anything else for like 2 or 3 years, right? They're not going to have anything else on PlayStation for years to come. So they have to like just go out there and try for like a brief period of time that like to pretend that like, oh, this game's actually secretly really good, right? Like Armor Core 6, right? We had the same process where we had to like do this thing where we're just like, oh, this game is actually really good. It's just not mainstream. It just didn't sell as well as some other games. It's just too hardcore for the plebs, right? Like we go through this process with like a lot of these games, Alan Wake 2, Spider-Man 2, God of War Ragnarok, The Last of Us Part 2, Days Gone, right? The list goes on and on, right? Where like a game clearly is not doing well, clearly has a ton of problems, is clearly not making money, is clearly like annoying people because of the decisions the creators made, but all we're seeing is people running damage control for them, right? And I do think the thing about Dragon's Dogma in particular is interesting because what's happening here with this game is completely flying in the face of what YouTubers have been saying about Capcom for the longest time, right? And that is this idea that Capcom had a redemption arc in the early 2000s or in like the mid 2010s, right? Like at some point, like in like the mid 2000s, they started sucking. Oh, they put out all these bad games that nobody liked, and then all of a sudden, oh, they became the best in the industry, right? They were putting out games like well, we're not gonna name them, but they put out some of the best games they ever made in the past 10 years. There was a redemption arc. Capcom is back, and they are dominating gaming right now. That's been the narrative for the longest time, right? That has been like a major thing in gaming YouTube circles, right? People like Susie Hunter, I'm sorry, men like Susie Hunter, like Maximilian Dude, like these individuals, right? People who have like, Angry Joe, people who have like men who have these ties and connections to Capcom, right? Who desperately want to be shilled, who want to like keep getting their support and keep maintaining positive relations with the company. Like they're coming out and trying to convince you that Capcom is good. Capcom has gone through a redemption arc and that they have done nothing but produce good games. Oh, except for Monster Hunter Rise, which was terrible because it launched on Nintendo first, right? Like, other than that, like they are very adamantly like just pro Capcom, right? And now we're seeing the same thing, right? Max Dude isn't enjoying Dragon's Dogma 2, but he's still coming out and trying to say the game is good. Why? To maintain his positive relationship with Capcom. Susie Hunter is coming out and making statements about Dragon's Dogma 2. Like he's saying that like, oh man, just because I have a pawn in the game, like that doesn't mean I'm biased when I say Dragon's Dogma 2 is a great game. Oh, you just like when I had like a role in Cyberpunk 2077, like the expansion that nobody played. That didn't make me biased when I made a video about it. Like reviewing the game. That's how bad these situations are getting, in which these men are coming out and just being like, oh, I'm in this game, but I'm still going to give it a review. And I am not biased for giving the review a positive score. Like that's becoming more and more of a problem with these industry shills. People talk about Youngin and the Yakuza thing, and like, it's not just him. Like it's a lot of these people, right? They're all like they're all like sucking dicks, literally in Susie Hunter's case, trying to make themselves big names in the industry, right? They are doing everything they can to downplay the very real problems with Dogmas 2, right? Right now, they're trying to say that the game is good if you just ignore like all the obvious problems with it, right? Like, oh, this is one of the best games this year, even though it's glitchy on PC, even though it has like all these frame rate issues, right? Like I remember when these same people were like complaining about Zelda, like it's so weird seeing them like turn around and look at like an objectively inferior game, this Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, and like trying to say that, like, oh, these are some of the best games ever made. No, these are the games that will make you money if you cover them positively, right? That's what's happening here. That's why so many people are so adamantly like pro Dragon's Dogma 2 right now, is because they don't want to accept the fact that Dragon's Dogma 2 is a disappointing release. Right, they're doing everything in their possible to run damage control. They're trying to shift the blame onto people like, oh, this isn't microtransactions aren't a new thing from Capcom. They've been doing this since DMC4. Yeah, and that was terrible then too. Like, why exactly are people using a terrible game like Devil May Cry 4 to justify what they're doing with Dragon's Dogma 2? Now, this is just the YouTube side of things. I do think from the actual fan base, like it does feel like people are very disappointed in this game, right? And that is really good to see because I've always spoken out about how like Dragon's Dogma is one of the most overhyped like pieces of shit in like the industry. Like I've always hated how people said this was like one of the best action RPGs ever made, and it was like misunderstood. No, it was always clunky. It was always unintuitive. It was always boring. It was repetitive. Like it's not fun. Okay, I own the game on Switch. I can tell you that I had no desire to play Dragon's Dogma 2 at all, right? Because I played the game before. I know what it's like, right? And with Dragon's Dogma 2, a 2024 release, it's worse than Breath of the Wild, a 2017 release, right? Capcom cannot compete with a 7-year-old game, let alone its sequel, which won Game of the Year of 2023, right? Like, why exactly are we still in denial about this? Why is DSP releasing statements trying to say that like, oh, Nintendo consoles, they're only for they're children's toys, when like he turns around and like worships Dragon's Dogma 2, worships Baldur's Gate 3, worships like Yakuza, like absolute trash franchises that are more rehashed and just broken down than anything Nintendo has put out ever. Okay? Like, I don't understand why so many people refuse to acknowledge the state of the industry, right? Like it's not just the West, it's not just like the woke activists, right? Like gaming in general has been going downhill for a very, very, very long time, since the beginning of the PS3 generation at the latest, right? And you're still seeing people refuse to acknowledge it. You're seeing people pretend this is like a relatively new thing. You're seeing people like pretend that Nintendo is the worst, the most anti-consumer uh, company in the industry, right? Okay, like how many microtransactions do you see in Princess Peach Showtime? Okay, or in another Code R, or in like Mario vs. DK? None, because they don't do that. Okay, like the cope that people have that like Nintendo is like that Capcom is better than Nintendo, that everybody is better than Nintendo is just a cope, right? And this is a really good example as to why. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a complete disaster, but nobody wants to admit it.